undergraduate programs at the master's, doctoral, and certificate level. And I'd be happy to talk with any of y'all in detail about any of those programs. But today what I wanted to do was just give you an overview of the process of preparing for graduate school, how to pick out a program that's the right fit for you. And once you figure out what program you want to pursue, what's the best way to go about putting together an application. So I'm going to go based off of my PowerPoint slides here. And if at any point, I don't know if the chat will pop up if you have questions, but at some point, maybe Kayla, if you need to, if you see the chat running out of control and want to stop me, please feel free to do that. So let's see. Kayla, would you mind, it says that I'm disabled from sharing my screen. Would you mind?
I made you the actual host, so let's
okay,
see.
there we go. There we go. Okay. All right, good deal. All right, so let's talk a little bit about preparing for graduate school. This is not University of South Carolina specific at all. It is, it's applicable for any program that you want to pursue at any school, pretty much. Let's see if we can get the slides moving here. All right, so the first question you've got to ask yourself is, why are you considering graduate school? Is it going to help you further your career goals? Will it provide more credentialing and licensing? A higher salary potential? Do you want to be a professor, in which case you need to pursue a PhD? Or have you taken a liking to undergraduate research and you have a subject or a specific topic that you'd like to investigate? Probably more important than asking your question about why you want to pursue graduate school is figuring out why you should not consider graduate school. And so I've got 3 statements that are on the screen there. And if you're grappling with any of these 3 statements, these are probably reasons, probably questions that you want to work to answer as you're wrapping up your time at Davidson. Going to grad school to find yourself, or to figure out what you're interested in, or just to delay going into the workforce. It's a good way to find a miserable 2 to 5 years and a waste of your time and money. So I would encourage you guys to do some strength finding and academic skill set finding to figure out exactly what you're interested in. Once you figure out exactly what you're interested in and you've answered that question of, yes, it's going to help me with my career, that's the time to launch into this. So think back to all the aspects of certain schools you had to consider when choosing which college to attend. So when you chose Davidson, you probably asked a lot of these questions: public versus private. Does it matter if it's in-state versus out-of-state? Does the size of the institution matter? Do I want a small private liberal arts, or do I want a big public university? Some of you may have considered an HBCU. Some of you may have considered specific majors. You may have asked yourself if you wanted athletics or opportunities to get involved in a wide array of different things. And when you finally decided on schools to apply to, all of the applications probably look somewhat similar. So you had your application, your high school transcripts, your SAT or ACT scores, and then I would imagine for Davidson, you may have had to write an essay or two. But for most colleges don't require an essay. Now, the graduate process is entirely different. The items that you considered when you decided to attend Davidson, those may be part of the process at the graduate level, and that's okay. They just shouldn't be the primary determining factors of your decision-making process for graduate school. You're probably going to choose a graduate school not based on the university as a whole, but rather the specific program that you want to enroll in. In other words, how pretty the campus is should matter far less than how strongly your research interests align with the interests and research activities of the faculty in that program. So when you applied to Davidson, you probably submitted your application to an undergraduate admissions office or an admissions college, and you may have indicated what you wanted to major in, but you probably didn't go much further than that, and that's fairly common. But when you apply to graduate school, you're going to submit your application to a graduate school or a graduate college, but your entire application needs to be tailored to the program that you're planning to pursue. So if you wanted to be a history major, your application was reviewed by an admissions counselor who reviewed applications from students wanting to study in any other major. But if you want to apply to a doctoral program in history, your application will be reviewed by the faculty in the history program. So knowing that should govern exactly how you craft the entire application. And these are the 5 fairly standardized parts of any graduate application: transcripts, test scores, personal statements, letters of recommendation, resume, or CV. And I'll dive into each one of those independently as we go forward here. So transcripts, you're going to need one from every college you attended. So even if over the course of the summer you took one class at a community college, or if you had a study abroad experience, all of those credits earned need to be reflected on all of the appropriate transcripts. One of the things that students or applicants get bogged down with is if you apply to several different graduate schools and you're having to provide transcripts from all of these different institutions, the cost can certainly start to add up. And so one thing that I want to encourage you guys with is that admissions decisions can be made using unofficial transcripts. And you only need to send official versions of those transcripts once you get accepted. So don't go spending a ton of money on transcript orders until you've been admitted and you have a good idea of the school or maybe a small subset of schools that you're considering. So don't go ordering a bunch of transcripts this semester if you're planning to apply for a program for next fall. Sort of wait it out, figure out where you get admitted, and then go from there. Test scores, the most widely accepted standardized test for graduate school admission is the GRE, but honestly, a lot of programs have started moving away from standardized tests altogether. And so this is going to be my first encouragement to y'all to always check to see what your program requirements are. So we've got some programs here at USC that are, they still require the GRE. We've got some that over the course of the summer waived it and removed it entirely as an admissions piece going forward. And then we've got some programs that are kind of in a one-year trial run where they are waiving it this year or considering it optional for this year and maybe potentially adding it back next year when the pandemic sort of finally goes away. So one thing I'd encourage you to do if you're a senior and you're planning to apply for next year, figure out exactly what you need to do. Like if you're applying to sociology at Chapel Hill and sociology at the University of South Carolina, one program may require the GRE and the other may not. If you're a junior, you want to make note of what programs are doing already, but keep in mind that some things may change over the course of the year. So there are a lot of our programs where we just straight up list it's optional for the 2020 and the 2021 admission cycle, but that we could open it back up for the next year. So just try to figure out, or just try to remember that these things operate on a program by program basis. If you're looking to go into the humanities or the social sciences, the MAT is typically accepted if you don't want to take the GRE. If you're going in for an MBA or you're going into an international business program, accounting, they will accept the GMAT. And then if you started off wanting to go into medical school and went so far as to taking the MCAT, some programs like biomedical sciences or really STEM heavy fields may accept your MCAT score in lieu of accepting GRE. Okay, the personal statement to me is the biggest opportunity to show the program that you're applying to why and how you are a good fit to study with them. So let's think back to a history example. You'd want to stay away from saying things like, my parents took me to a history museum when I was 8 and I fell in love with history. Stay away from platitudes like that. Instead, you want to talk about how your conversations with your history professors at Davidson inspired you to dive deeper into certain topics, or Maybe how your 6 months working at a museum while in undergrad helps you better understand how to approach historical research. And as you write, you want to keep in mind that you aren't just applying to the program, you're applying to the faculty in the program. So talk about how your research interests are similar. Refer to the specific research of a professor that interests you and why. So my encouragement would be to find 2 to 4 faculty members that are doing research that really interests you, and specifically state out why you may want to work with those faculty members one by one. You can go as specific as mentioning certain research publications that they've had and how you were inspired by their work, or how it encouraged you to look at a topic a different way, that kind of stuff. It really goes a long way. And sort of what you can expect is that everybody that's going to apply is going to have a strong academic history, and they're going to have competitive GRE scores if the program is requiring the GRE. But applicants can really increase the competitiveness of their application if they're able to articulate why they are a good fit, not just to study at this school, not just in this program, but among the faculty within the program at this school. So to be as specific as you possibly can. Letters of recommendation requirements are going to change from program to program. Just about every program is going to require 2, at least 2. I've never seen a program at any school that requires less than 2 letters of recommendation. So just plan for that to be the baseline. But some programs, particularly for students that are going directly from an undergraduate program into a doctoral program, those programs may require at least 3 letters of recommendation. You're going to want to focus on academic sources. So it's entirely okay if you spend the summer lifeguarding or waiting tables, but your supervisors from those types of positions likely won't carry much weight in terms of your letters of recommendation unless you're going into a service-oriented field, like in Masters of Public Administration or hotel, restaurant, and tourism management, those types of things where it's not necessarily research-based, it's more service-based or more professional-based. Those letters of recommendation may carry weight there. But if you're going into a Master's of Science or a research master's program, or certainly a PhD program, you want to focus on getting letters of recommendation from academic sources. Now, programs are going to be very upfront about what they're looking for. So this is another situation where it's a program by program, school by school thing, even within the same discipline. The chemistry program at the University of Georgia is going to maybe look for a different number of letters of recommendation than the chemistry program here at the University of South Carolina, but they're going to tell you up front exactly who to get recommendations from and how many to pursue. Now, most PhD programs are going to request that you submit a CV. Most master's programs are going to specify a resume. These terms sometimes, depending on your history, can be used interchangeably, but I would try my best to try to stay within the guidelines that are laid out for you as closely as possible. So if a program requests a resume, submit a resume. If they request a CV, try to provide a CV, even if you don't have a ton of research experience. Most master's programs are going to be fine with a resume. What I would encourage you to do is, as you prep your resume, treat it as if you are prepping for a job, for an actual position of employment. If you're applying to 5 different positions, you're going to want your resume to be tailored to each individual job that you're applying to. Same goes with an academic resume for your application. You're going to want the skills that a certain program is looking for to be highlighted within your resume. So it's okay if it's 2 pages. Most resumes for a master's or a PhD program can be whittled down into 1 page. Now a CV is going to be static, and so any type of work or volunteer or service experience that you've done, and certainly any type of research or publication or presentation experiences that you've had, need to be detailed on your CV, and it can be as long as it needs to be. And so if you've got a faculty member at Davidson that you've studied under, that's been doing research or teaching for 25 years, you're going to notice that they're going to have a very long CV. Academically, the CV is typically the way that it goes once you get into the doctoral field, the doctoral level. And so it's entirely okay to start building that from the ground up now in your undergrad. So most programs are going to use a standardized application provided by their graduate school or graduate college. So roughly about 200 of our 250 programs here at USC use our graduate school application. But some programs use a discipline-specific standardized application that's used nationwide. So if you're pursuing a program like physical therapy, all the physical therapy programs across the country use the same standardized application. If you're applying for something like health communications or epidemiology and biostatistics, anything that's public health related, you're likely going to apply through the Schools of Public Health Application System, or SOPHAS, SOPHAS. And so the way that that works is if you're applying to an epidemiology program, you fill out one application and then you essentially tell them how many programs across the country that you want them to send your application to. And then your application bill sort of ramps up from that point. So this is another thing that you want to keep track of. You want to keep track of not just your letters of recommendation, your application deadline, your requirements as part of the application. Keep track of a spreadsheet that's sort of going school by school, program by program, laying out exactly what you need in order to apply. So if you wanted to pursue a PhD program, it's entirely possible to do directly out of undergrad. The good thing about pursuing a PhD program is that typically, especially if you go into a research, a high-level research institution, you're going to be looking at a situation where your tuition and fees are provided and you'll get a healthy stipend. Typically, in return for that, you're going to be providing about 20 hours of research or teaching for your academic unit. So if you go into, say, our clinical community psychology program, you're going to maybe teach a psychology 101 course. You're going to be working in a research lab, and they're going to waive your tuition and fees and provide you with a living stipend on top of that. If you've got undergraduate research experience, I would encourage you to look into the possibility of bypassing the master's altogether and going directly into a PhD program. And we've got a lot of programs, particularly in the humanities and social sciences, that will allow you to do that. At the master's level, we do offer funding opportunities. Typically, they come with about 10 to 20 hours of work or research within your academic program or somewhere within the campus environment. The way that we operate these at the master's level is we automatically knock out-of-state tuition down to the in-state rate and then provide a stipend on top of that. So it is less lucrative than a PhD stipend or a PhD funding package, but it does go a long way, especially if you are an out-of-state student looking to come to one of our top-notch graduate programs. And this is regardless of program. It's an opportunity that's provided across the board. So how do you go about securing an assistantship? This is one of the most common questions that we get, particularly when somebody's burned out with the application phase. There is rarely an additional application. Programs typically will have 2 application deadlines. And what I want to encourage all of you to do is to apply by that first deadline. The first deadline is for folks that want to pursue an assistantship, a fellowship, or some sort of other funding opportunity. And the other final deadline is for folks that are just looking to study, and maybe they work full-time off campus, or maybe they have a family full-time and they only want to study part-time. Different types of variables, of course, factor into that. But I would always encourage you to apply by the earliest deadline in any case. In most instances, your personal statement is going to serve as the unofficial application for your graduate assistantship. So this makes it doubly important, again, to tell the program which faculty members you're interested in studying under, not just from an admissions standpoint, but also it goes a long way in in helping them find an assistantship or funding opportunity for you. So these assistantships may be offered at the time of admission. They may come weeks after the admission, and you may not learn specifics until much later. A lot of our programs, like all 3 of our PhD programs in psychology, have a December 1st application deadline. They begin admitting students, I believe, in January. And so then they bring the students in for sort of an admitted students weekend in March, where they sort of work out the specifics of what the assistantship process is going to look like in the funding packages and all that. So it can be a longer term process. But what I would encourage you all to do, regardless of which school you go to, you should know the specifics of your assistantship well before you enroll. You don't want to get in, just like you don't want to go into a program where the academics and the research interests of the faculty aren't aligning sort of one-to-one with your interests. You also don't want to get into a position where you're doing work each week in a research lab that doesn't appeal to you, or maybe you thought you were getting a research position, but you're surprised working at the front desk of the academic unit. And this happens school by school, right? And so some students can feel like they get the rug pulled out from under them. What I would encourage you to do is, no matter where you go, before you commit to choosing a school, you should know the specifics of your assistantship and your funding package well before you arrive in August of 2021 or whenever it is. So that's sort of the primary focus of what I was going to talk about. I've got my contact info there, culpeppa@mailbox.sc.edu. I'll also put that in the chat in case you want to follow up with me one-on-one. I'd be happy to talk with you and get you in touch with any folks in any academic unit here that you may be interested in. But I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and just sort of open it up for any questions that you guys have. Be happy to help you with anything, even if it's not USC specific. What can I help you guys with?
Yeah, quick question. What do you recommend as like a good starting point to kind of brief yourself on kind of what's out there? Like what website or searching program to kind of jump the gun?
Right. I would always avoid just a standard Google search, honestly. And that's kind of the first thing that people do. The trouble with that is your Google search isn't necessarily going to drill down into the concentrations or the subsections of a certain degree program. And so we've got our social psychology concentration here at USC is ranked number 3 in the country. But we don't, it's a sub-concentration of our sociology program. And so if you were to Google social psychology doctoral programs, our program isn't going to come up, despite the fact that it's one of the top, certainly one of the top in the region. And so what I would encourage you to do is start thinking like a scholar now. So what I mean by that is, if you've got something, a topic that you're really interested in, start reading maybe one research-based article, journal article per week, and see exactly what you're interested in. And when you find something that you're interested in, you're going to see a lot of the same authors and co-authors start to pop up. And those authors and co-authors might be the ones that you want to sort of default, they're your first choice for the school that you want to go into. If you can find folks that you align with one-to-one, you sort of can bypass the top-down approach of finding a school. If you can find the department first, that's the way that I would go about it. If you're looking for more of a master's, like if you're looking for an MPA or a professional-based master's program, that's going to be far more open to, what region you want to live in. What does the program specialize in? We've got certain aspects of our programs here, like in our Master's of Public Administration, you can get a concentration in emergency management. And so in those types of situations, the Google search might go a little bit further than, say, a research master's or a doctoral program. So that was a long-winded answer, but I hope it sort of gives you some ideas of how you can get started.
No, thank you. Yeah, that was great.
Excellent. Yep. What else?
Hi, do you have any recommendations about dual degree programs? Do you have any like personal knowledge on whether that's something that's good to apply for both at the same time? I've noticed that some programs allow you to actually start off a year in one program before applying to another. Do you have any general advice on that process?
Sure, yeah. So we have several we call them combination degree programs now. The thing to figure out is exactly which route you want to take. So if you wanted to go get a PhD, MD, or you wanted to get a JD with the School of Law and a combo with, say, our Masters of Public Administration or Criminology and Criminal Justice, the thing you have to know about those is you've got to go through all of the coursework for that professional program, the MD or the JD first, before they start letting you take classes that are for the master's program. So that's important to know on the front end, is that it's going to be law focused, or it's going to be medicine focused. Whereas if you wanted to go get something like a Master's of Public Health and a Master's of Social Work dual degree, that's far more, the application process for that is far more laid back. And you take classes in any given semester that can count towards both. And so for those of you who may be unfamiliar with the idea of a dual or combination degree, it's essentially you're pursuing 2 degrees at the same time, and you've got courses that cross over. In most cases here at USC, it's 9 courses. I think it's 9 to 12 credit hours that can cross over from degree to degree. And so in most instances, instead of pursuing a JD for 3 years and then a Master's of Public Administration for 2 years, and thus 5 altogether, it cuts your degree length down to 4 years. If you pursue 2 masters at the same time, it cuts it from 4 independently down to 3 combined. And so you do have to apply to both programs independently. So you have to be admitted to both programs independently. And in some cases, even because if a program does, or a school does not say that there's a specific combination program available, it doesn't mean that you can't pursue those concurrently. And so you can sort of, even at the master's level or doctoral level, craft the additional coursework for another degree if you'd like to do that. So it's certainly worth pursuing. I would say I would not pursue it unless I knew exactly what I wanted to do career-wise. Maybe you're pursuing a Master's of Social Work because you're open to the entire field of social work. You wouldn't want to go pursue a Master's of Social Work and a Master's of Public Administration at the same time, unless you knew that you wanted to do social work in a very sort of defined context at the start of your degree program. Does that help?
Yes, that was great. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. What other questions do y'all have?
So I've noticed that a few programs I've looked at, to like a 5-year PhD program, typically you'll get a master's degree on the way to that. Is that always the case, or can you talk a little bit more about how that sort of works?
Sure, it's not always the case, but it's common. So it happens in our history programs. It happens in a lot of our social sciences, all 3 of our psychology programs, and it even happens in the STEM fields, like in chemistry. Those programs do admit at the doctoral level, and then for whatever reason, once a student completes their comprehensive exam, they have the ability to finish a thesis or whatever it may be, and I call it mastering out. And the reason somebody might want to do that is they realize, okay, I don't want to be a faculty member, I don't want to do research full-time, maybe I want to go work at a community college, or I want to go teach high school or something like that. And so a lot of programs do allow you to do that if they are a directly undergrad to doctoral admission process. And then there are some fields where it's just not an option to go directly into the PhD. Public health, almost every discipline within public health, you have to get the master's before you can apply to a doctoral program. And so it's most of the time, once you get past your coursework at the master's or doctoral level, you can master out, and you're just saying, I don't want to go through the 2 to 2.5 year dissertation process to get the PhD. What else?
I have one more question. Do
Sure.
you have any advice on how to kind of angle our request for our recommenders? Kind of if there's any kind of particular information we need to give them about each individual program, or just the general path we want to take, or if there was a dual degree program, like how much information and how much guidance should we be giving our recommenders?
That's an excellent question. So it's going to vary depending on where you are in the process. So if you're a sophomore or a junior, I would say just put it on their radar that you want to talk with them about being a recommender for graduate study in the future. If you're further along in the process and you know what schools you're going to apply to, I would say be as specific as possible. And hopefully these are folks that you've maintained relationships with since maybe even your first year on campus. You've asked a lot of questions with them. They understand exactly what your interests are. So the deeper the relationship that you have with that faculty member or that research associate, whatever it may be, the easier it is to ask for these types of questions. But like, if you know that you're only going to apply to 2 schools and it's because of faculty research A, B, and C at those schools, let them know that up front. And if you've got a strong relationship with those faculty members, they're gonna do what they can to incorporate the strongest information possible into your letter of recommendation. So I'd say just use your judgment on where you are in the process, and give as much information as you can once you get more information available based on where you want to apply.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What other questions do y'all have? Is there anything in particular that y'all might be stressed out about the process?
Sure, I have a quick question.
Okay.
My plan is to apply for classics PhD programs, and I have not done math in a very long time.
Okay.
So do you think that, as long as as long as I can show that I, can add, that the GRE math score won't be too relevant?
Yeah, so what we find is that typically when you get into programs that are very specified like that, like the classics or the humanities, yeah, they care that you can tie your shoes and can do basic math, right? But that verbal section of the GRE is going to carry so much more weight. And the flip side to that is if you're in the physics program or chemistry, yeah, they want to make sure that you can string a sentence together. And truthfully, they want to know that you can write at a high academic level, but they're going to care far more about your quantitative skills and your analytical skills at the quantitative side. And so I would not stress so much about getting a high score, or maybe even an average score on the section of the GRE that maybe does not apply at all to your academic discipline. If you do great on the verbal side, it's going to carry a lot more weight in the admissions process, and frankly in the fellowship process as well.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wouldn't necessarily worry so much if a program says this is our total minimum score that we're looking for. If you come in under that and you blow the verbal score out of the water from what they're typically asking for, that's going to go a long way. What else? One thing that y'all might want to look into, if you determine that the GRE is going to be required for programs that you apply to, the GRE is offering at-home options. And I think they're doing that at least through the end of this calendar year. And it's fully vetted and proctored, and nothing to worry about in terms of the legitimacy of it. And so if that's something that you want to go ahead and do, might not be a terrible idea, because programs are going to change from school to school, or requirements are going to change from program to program, school to school. If you're a junior, you might also want to go ahead and take it. It's early to do it, but if you can go ahead and get that out of the way, not a terrible idea. Scores are good for 5 years. Kayla, can you think of any big picture questions that maybe I missed, or that would be helpful?
I think you covered most of it, but again, if any of y'all have questions, he provided his email address in the chat. You can always reach out to me, which is kacorbin@davidson.edu, or our general careers email at careers@davidson.edu. So if you leave this session and you're like, I really wish I'd asked that question, just reach out to one of us. We can definitely make sure it gets answered.
For sure.
I have one quick question.
Okay.
So do you have any recommendations for the application process for online master's programs versus in person?
Yeah, what we're seeing with online programs is that they are moving away at a high, and this is just anecdotally here at USC, they're moving away from the standardized test scores much faster than some of our on-campus traditional programs. And so if you're applying to an online program, there's a good chance that you won't need that, but the application is going to be the same, and it's going to look the same and feel the same. The interface is all going to be the same. Letters of recommendation, most of them are still going to require 2. So it's still pretty much the same process, just a higher chance that you're not going to need the standardized test.
Awesome, thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, cool. Well, if y'all don't have anything else, just feel free, like I said, to shoot me an email. I'm happy to help, even if it's not U of SC related. I'm happy to help sort of steer you in the right direction. I've been doing this for almost 8 years now, so I've kind of got the lay of the land of what schools are doing what and what cool stuff is out there. So feel free to reach out if I can ever help you with anything. And then, of course, if it's anything USC related, we'd love to talk to you more about possibly coming down here when you finish up at Davidson. So Kayla, if you've got anything else, I'm good.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time. That's all that I have. Some of our students are saying thank you as well. But again, just let us know if any of y'all have any questions.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Y'all have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.